Before we begin, Colin, I just want to say a huge thank you to you and everybody at Legal Operators, who are allowing us to bring you this webinar, and of course, everybody who is in attendance as well. So what's on the agenda today? Colin covered it a little bit, but this is just to give you a little bit further of a background. So I'm just going to provide a brief personal introduction in addition to a brief overview of Neota Logic. We're then going to discuss, some of the challenges that the companies are facing, followed by a little more information about Neota itself and what Neota allows our clients and users to essentially rapidly transform their in-house legal services into digital applications. Lastly, once I just cover that, I'm just going to discuss some of the use cases that our corporate and law firm clients have built on our platform. Now, Colin mentioned it. I encourage audience participation and interaction during this presentation, so feel free to raise questions, and if it won't completely derail my train of thought at the time, I'll answer it on the spot. But if not, I kindly request, everybody remain patient, and I'll address it at the end, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So nevertheless, without further ado, and under the assumption most people are logging in remotely here, I always like to say it, tighten up those sweatpants strings. I know someone's guilty in wearing them somewhere out there. Button up the work remote outfits if it even has those buttons, but just get comfy and let's kind of begin. A little bit about myself. I have zero relation to the Rasmussen who conducts those Rasmussen political reports. I get that a lot. In addition, I find that I'm at a constant struggle with having my fridge within an arm's reach of where I work remotely. But on a more serious note, I previously worked at an immigration law firm for about 10 years under various different roles, from paralegal to CSM to a worldwide standards and knowledge manager, where I oversaw the implementation of new processes and service models and standards within the firm worldwide. And then I transitioned into data analytics, where I would lead and participate in that planning and development and implementation of internal and client technologies. But it was really within that role that I kind of discovered that power of leveraging information at hand and like the value of automation to create those efficiencies, generate revenue, which led me to Neota. So I've been with Neota about 1.5 years, almost going on 2 at this point. I began as a CSM, and currently, as you can see, I'm the Director of Client Solutions and Engagement, where I really like to think that my job is to ensure that you get the most out of your subscription from honestly just the general expression or having general interest in our platform to full-blown implementation. So we'll kind of get into a little bit further here about Neota Logic itself. And I apologize if some of this is going to come off as salesy or a sales pitch, but I am passionate about the product, and I just want to ensure everybody has a clear and concise understanding as to what Neota has to offer, and it'll also provide some further context to how our current clients and or customers have utilized our platform. So we are not an off-the-shelf product, but rather, Neota is a no-code, rapid deployment, click and drag platform, and it enables our clients to build digital solutions. So this means in practice or theory, non-technical programmers can build applications within our platform without having any of those programming skills or backgrounds. So typically, these solutions are going to revolve around the automation of expertise knowledge or automation, businesses and legal processes, workflows, and last but not least, the automation of documentation. We have approximately 25 to 30% of the top AM 100 law firms in the US. In London, we work with a lot of those Magic Circle firms as well, in addition to many law firms and corporates in the Asia-Pac region. As you can see, we have global outreach with offices in New York, London, and Melbourne. At the moment, we're all working remotely, but hopefully we'll be returning back to the office soon. But again, just to reiterate, we provide professionals with that wide range of easy-to-use tools that is to rapidly build applications that automate any aspect of your services. So let's discuss some of these challenges that some companies may be facing. But as I mentioned in the description of the webinar, and this is more certainly in today's world, having to manage that exponential increase in demand for legal expertise with scarce experts and a limited budget is really becoming an impossible task for those in-house lawyers. Not only do in-house lawyers have to manage this demand, but there's that fundamental need to make legal expertise more accessible to the business and then to deliver that expertise securely and effectively at whatever that point of need may be. And let's be honest, legal departments cannot do this with traditional methods after being thrust into the digital age during this pandemic. And that kind of brings me to the goal of this webinar, which is I'm really going to try to discuss and illustrate how legal departments can leverage no-code platforms such as Neota to easily build out their own bespoke applications that can automate any aspect of their legal services, again, thus creating efficiencies, generating revenue, etc. One of the best methods to really improve productive capacity or embrace automation, or even just the automating of processes, and this is where Neota kind of comes into the picture. So our goal is to give you back your time and to automate your services without having to dive into a world of code. So you can digitize the automation of answers, the sharing of knowledge, creation of documents, work streams and workflows, approvals and reviews, and essentially the possibilities are endless because we are a platform. So we like to say, imagine if somebody offered you a solution to get back 60% of your day. Assuming we're all kind of logical human beings on the call here, and that being a rhetorical question, it's all achievable and embracing automation and no-code solutions such as Neota. And as the old saying goes, time is money, so why not try to maximize your time? Scroll down a little here. So let's discuss the platform, or Neota's platform, a little further. So to reiterate upon my comments that I made earlier, we again provide those professionals with that wide range of easy to use tools that is really to rapidly build your applications and automate any aspect of your services. Now, while we excel in creating applications around these three primary areas that you see here, those being expertise automation, process automation, and document automation, at the end of the day, we're a platform. So again, anything is possible. The platform has a number of tools and features that enable no-code app development, and all of these tools and capabilities available within our platform were designed, to work together and really help take our customers from that ideation perspective to the production or the digital journey in its entirety. But with that in mind, I just want to touch on these three solution types a little further. So the expertise automation here, this is kind of the example of scaling subject matter expertise by automating advice, making it that it's a cost efficient and accurate. The process automation here, this is where you kind of get into streamlining business operations and those processes. Classic example would be an NDA, some type of an intelligent workflow where you have the ability to automate the creation, the negotiation, and the execution of the NDAs. And more importantly, you can ensure that that NDA, is signed, sent, and filed. But further, you can enable integrations with a third party, single sign-on, matter management, document management, and even e-signature platforms, such as DocuSign, Kira, Haiku, SharePoint, iManage, all just to name a few within that workflow as well. Part of the process automation as well is that we see a lot of people within Neota Logic utilize some of our data storage capabilities. So we eliminate the need for any authors and or clients to design any sort of data storage and manipulation functionality through code. We do this by what we refer to as Neota Data Manager, or NDM. And with NDM, you'll have the ability to push an executed document and or information back into our dashboard to act as a data management system or a DMS platform. And in doing so, you can leverage the information that you've captured within that database for any future, auditing purposes, additional applications, identify pain points in a workflow, reporting, and just even further data analytics. Last but not least is document automation. So we have a Microsoft Word toolbar add-in that allows you to mark up a document so that the inputs proposed to the users or gathered via our integration capabilities with other platforms, it will populate the document, eliminating any human interaction or error. So additionally, utilizing our additional logic and reasoning tools, you can dictate specific clauses and or language to appear. And as you can imagine, this is incredibly useful as you can then dictate a user's journey so that they only see the information that is relevant to them, streamlining the entire virtual experience. Lastly, in addition to these primary areas of focus, we've implemented some further tools on our platform that I just want to discuss briefly. I will not be showing them, but some use them on the back end, and those are referred to as Canvas and Workflow. Canvas is a web-based click and drag platform. And again, this enables our users to build very simplistic Neota Logic applications. It's similar to what you would see with a Visio or a flowchart. And the best part is you do not have to have any prior knowledge of how our system works in order to use that. In addition, our other capability or feature or tool is what we refer to as workflow. And this is just somewhat self-explanatory, and it shares a similar functionality to Canvas. However, it can be utilized to create a more complex workflow as opposed to that simplistic foundational app as you would in Canvas. But utilizing all these tools, users can build prototypes in a matter of minutes and hours, rather than days. And a lot of the future use cases that we're going to discuss momentarily were built upon this previous idea. The final icing on the cake, and one of our lesser known yet strengths, is really our customization capabilities. And I'm referring to what I've referred to as theme editing. So you can employ some type of custom CSS script, Bootstrap, any type of design mechanisms, but ultimately your application is going to always look as clean and professional as you would like, with the ability to perhaps mirror any company branding. So that kind of wraps up everything about Neota Logic here. But
hey,
as you can imagine, yeah.
Just jump in really quick. Mickey has a question. He wants to know, is this something that takes the place of a CMS, or it integrates with one?
Absolutely. So from an integrations perspective, we just like to say anything with a REST API, we have the ability to integrate with full transparency. So it could certainly be that. And we've seen people use this for triage and routing, self-service legal and policy advice applications, business process automation, just client onboarding. So there's multiple different use cases. Just kind of, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, just a follow up there. So more like a hub.
It could be a hub, yes. So the idea would be that if you're going to look at it from an integrations perspective, you would utilize our logic and reasoning tools and then employ that with whatever that particular integration that you're looking at. Perhaps it's a machine learning platform or a natural language processing platform where you could either utilize their capabilities, but then attach and leverage our logic and reasoning tools to apply further, logic and kind of some additional capabilities that those external natural language processing or, again, machine learning platforms cannot do.
Yeah, I think once you go through the user journeys and the use cases, it's gonna be kind of spelled out a little bit more, Mickey.
Yes, and Mickey, we have a slew of applications in our app gallery on our website, which I can discuss a little later as well. So feel free, as I'm just going to touch on a few of the applications that our clients have built, but there's obviously many more that can be visible there. All right, perfect. Thank you, Mickey. So some of the benefits, as you can imagine, to kind of employing a automation platform, as you see here, very simply, it's including but not limited to these bullet points. So obviously increasing productivity, you're really just streamlining a lot of those processes, minimizing any human error, freeing up resources, serving the business 24/7. An application or a digital application is not going to take a sick day. It's not going to be out on vacation. It's available from a 24/7 perspective. So it's great to be able to deploy applications, on a global perspective, as it'll be there available. You can increase the accuracy and the consistency of legal advice, generate revenue, enhance the prototyping process, but the benefits really speak for themselves. So I'll continue through. So one thing here is, how can Neota help your corporate legal department? And this is where we start kind of looking at some of those use case examples. So before I get into this, I like to say that, our users and or clients can build applications, or we can build any advice-based solutions you want. Our service models are whatever you would like it to look like. So with that in mind, here are just some of the examples of how we could assist your corporate legal department. Perhaps it's something you're looking into, perhaps a legal portal, where you have the ability to capture, triage and route requests to the right resources. You could always evolve that list of service types, according to the data that's being entered as well, if that was something you were interested in. Perhaps it's going to be self-service applications where you would route your business to self-service apps, perhaps, focusing on those low value, high reoccurring tasks and or advice without actually having to consult with a legal, compliance, HR, or procurement professional. Contract lifecycle automation. I mentioned this previously, but you can automate the creation, negotiation, and approval of any type of contract, form, or online agreement. And then last but not least, the compliance automation. So as you can see, you're going to be providing your business with those self-service legal analysis and advice tools to solve that multi-jurisdictional compliance issues. So to reiterate, whether it be client onboarding, business intake analysis, triage and routing, the self-service models, document drafting, analytics, the platform can help. So here, let's take a dive into some of our specific use cases. So this first one here is one of our use cases that Westfarmers had created. So Westfarmers is one of Australia's largest listed companies, and their diverse business operations cover home improvement and outdoor living, even to an industrials division with businesses in chemicals, energy and fertilizers, and industrial and safety products. But the challenge that Westfarmers faced was what they referred to as a more for less problem. So this was meaning that they had an increased demand for their legal services. However, this was countered by cost pressures due to a legal team being a corporate overhead, if you will. And this really created that more for less problem. So with this in mind, they knew they had to demonstrate a quick win. And that quick win had to illustrate a streamlined yet efficient process while freeing up some lawyers' time in addition to minimizing human error. And after applying all of those requirements, they were able to determine that they needed to improve upon their NDA process. And prior to doing so, they actually approached a number of software providers for their NDA automated solution, judging them on several factors. And those factors were the depth of authoring, including the ability to handle complex business rules, processes, and document templates in a single platform. And they didn't want an off-the-shelf product, really limiting their capabilities so that they could expand upon their solutions if necessary. Another point of that criterion was that it had to be easy to use from an end business applications perspective. And last but not least, there was some professional services support that they were kind of interested in and required for the re-engineering of this NDA product. But ultimately, as you can deduct from this presentation, they went with Neota. So after much knowledge engineering and kind of internal identification as to what their NDA process looked like from an end-to-end perspective, they were able to minimize the number of their NDA templates and reduced its NDA suite to really 4 standard documents. They then worked with us to identify what that workflow and/or the application would look like, always from an end-to-end perspective. So once we created that application, they were able to automate their high volume NDAs, utilizing our unlimited user model to both the platform and the NDA solution, input their complex legal rules, embed some document automation, ultimately creating a customized, quote, out of the box solution. And as you can see here from the benefits, some of those benefits were increasing the productivity, providing that 24/7 coverage, freeing up those resources, and obviously always ensuring compliance and accuracy. So these are benefits that will typically reappear for all of our future clients and/or customers. Scroll down a little here. So this is actually some screenshots of the application itself. So one thing I do want to point out is we integrated their application with our workflow and analytics dashboard. And this allowed Westfarmers lawyers a single console from which they could view the statuses of every NDA associated with their businesses. And that's what you see at the bottom here. So the dashboard not only tracked at what stage of the process the particular NDA was up to, but it also provided insight for each individual agreement. And these are just some other screenshots on the top. You see very clear, concise information with regards to kind of an introduction to the user, some drop-down menus, all the colors on the website mirrored their actual website, but I just wanted to point that out. Fujitsu. So Fujitsu is actually the world's 7th largest IT services provider, and they're also #1 in Japan. So they're the leading Japanese information and communication technology ICT company, and they offer a full range of technology, products, solutions, and services. So you would have thought I've researched that company a little bit and obtained that from their website. So guilty as charged, I did. But nevertheless, their problem was almost identical to Westfarmers' challenge, and it was really just providing more for less, which, to reiterate, was the increase in demand for legal services while enduring those cost pressures or budgetary concerns. So they really needed something, a platform or a product to evolve an application or iteration of their concept that did not mirror other license models, but also had a minimal learning curve. So additionally, if I may quote Ben Stolito, the legal director of Fujitsu, their goal was to, quote, codify the judgment a skilled lawyer would use to look at a contract and replicate that cognitive process within a tool, end quote. So within this tool, they wanted to solve for 5 key areas, as you see under solution here. So one was identifying that contract risk. So this is really the low volume or the high volume deals where they could identify which are the best prospects and which add 0 to no value at all. Sharing global knowledge or know-how. So they wanted to bring together the experience so that individuals benefited from the weighted group. They could all just share knowledge. They wanted to accelerate the deal cycle by focusing on these key risks. So as a supplier, they wanted to ensure that the customer had a beneficial experience. So having a clear view of what represents risks enabled its employees to discuss things that actually mattered to the business. Management contract risk. So those delivering their IT services, benefit from the insight obtained from those actually negotiating it, thus creating that clear view of any risk that they had to accept, but also how to manage risk effectively. And last but not least, creating automated workflows to distribute their reports quickly. So Fujitsu did not have any software developers. However, spending a few days, or I should say, after spending a few days with Neoto, they were able to generate an iteration of their app within 2 weeks. So after seeing all of the capabilities available within our platform, in the end, they created a risk assessment tool. And what it is this application essentially proposed dynamic questioning to ask a series of questions to the user, collate those data points where the tool calculates a risk report, which was a PDF template, and this actually mirrored Fujitsu's branding. And the outcome of the application was to provide that report to all of their internal stakeholders. So as I mentioned previously, here are just some of those benefits. And as you can imagine, they tend to reappear, a better understanding of the internal processes. They were able to evolve that constant stream of innovation. They pooled their, the global expertise. And then here are just some additional examples as well. Here is actually some screenshots or additional information about the application itself. However, I just want to focus, on the bottom right here, and this gives you an idea of what that deal cycle looked like with regards to kind of an end-to-end perspective. They had the new opportunity here. They would assess that risk throughout and then manage the risk, ultimately completing the deal thereafter. In addition, here is just some of the codification of the risk, what that process looked like, and a quick summary of the risk assessment tool, which I kind of touched upon on the last slide. Deloitte. So Deloitte. Yeah.
We had a question coming in from Jamie Fraser. He says, do you come across clients struggling with return on investment demand from their finance teams when it comes to buying products like Neota?
To be honest, yes. But what we like to do there is we would always say demonstrate a quick win. So if you have a use case in mind, we are more than happy to create some type of an MVP or a product that you can take that essentially idea and make it tangible. And once you show it to whomever that particular party may be, it kind of sparks immediate interest. And then you can kind of start assigning actual value to the process that you're actually automating. So you would have to kind of look at the time that you would have to dedicate to that. What is the process that you're actually automating? And again, we like to say kind of focus on those low value but high reoccurring tasks that take up a lot of your time, because you'll be kind of surprised once you automate those. It allows you to really focus on that, higher, more perhaps billable work, or even just streamline the processes from a company or a firm global perspective. But I'd be happy to, discuss anything further if you'd like directly, if you have a particular use case in mind, and kind of go into further how we can demonstrate any, potential areas to demonstrate that ROI.
And workflows. I suppose she's referring to the automation of the NDA workflow is part of the cell and it's cheaper and faster to implement. What's your,
Sorry, Mickey, you were breaking up a little bit. Colin, you were breaking up a little bit.
so if it's not necessary to have a CLM, if you can replicate those same workflows using Neota, is part of the cell that is cheaper and faster to implement.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, workflows is just, the tip of the iceberg with something that you're able to achieve within a platform. So I don't want to view it as, kind of limiting yourself to that. But obviously, if that is something that you're trying to, kind of automate and streamline, and you have that ability to do so internally, that'd be great. But really where the value comes in is to what you can do with it thereafter within our actual platform, with regards to that data analytics, or perhaps it's something that you want to create somewhat of a central dashboard so everybody can kind of go in and use it. If you want it to be externally facing or even internally facing. So there's just a lot of different things you could do with the actual platform itself. So I don't want it to think that it's limited to just strictly a workflow potential. So let me see. Deloitte, I'll continue through here. Deloitte's one of the largest organizations, providing, audit and insurance, tax, legal, risk, and financial advisory and consulting services. But this application actually achieves something that I think everyone could relate to or, find useful during these unique times or circumstances that we find ourselves in. So the goal was to create an application to target pressing business needs during COVID-19 or during the pandemic. And this application would accurately assess the risk under these circumstances and centralize the expertise on a COVID risk management into one convenient location. And thus they created this COVID-19 workplace safety assessment tool. So after some data analysis, the tool provided an indicative view of your organization's readiness to ensure health, safety, well-being of its people, and it was all done by leveraging guidelines provided by SafeWork Australia. Further, utilizing Neota's logic and reasoning tools, the application posed a questionnaire to the user, and then based upon their inputs, it provided an assessment report at the end. So not only did it provide users with an assessment report, identifying their particular readiness as an organization, but it also provided that information to Deloitte thereafter to help them identify those hardest hit regions and or sectors. So as you can imagine, here are just some of those benefits of creating such an application. However, this is something that I love this application. Not only that it was a pretty clear and concise application, but it provided advice and analysis to individuals, but it also really assisted with the containment and the recovery of the COVID-19 virus in its entirety. And I'll just show you a quick snapshot of what that application looked like here. So you'll see very clean, concise, entry level, if you want to say an entry level message to the user, takes 15 minutes to complete. And as they would begin, they have some drop downs in addition to some questions that they pose to the user, but utilizing our logic and reasoning on the back end, it would then determine the output accordingly. KPMG, obviously best known for their audit, tax and advisory firm, they wanted to resolve a few challenges, and this is both internally and externally. So primarily, those challenges were that they had an extremely manual and lengthy processes and wanted to improve their experience and or journey. So they knew that they needed to build something in-house without programmers, and they wanted to build products, again, from an internal and external perspective or point of view. So they ended up building 3 applications or solutions, as you see here. Those being the Law Data Breach Assist, the Business Visitor Visa Assist, and the Local File Tracker. And I'm going to discuss them in the next coming slides. But again, the benefits always increasing effectiveness, client satisfaction, productivity, just to give you an idea. So this here, this is actually the Business Visitor Visa application. So this application targeted their global mobility and HR teams of large corporations. And what it did is it allowed its users to input details about their intended travel, when, where, how long are you going? And based upon your inputs, the application would assess your trip from a tax, payroll, and even an immigration perspective. And once that assessment was completed, the application delivered 2 things. One, the user would receive a personalized report which was providing this information to them. And secondly, the application also tracked and monitored all of the employees working overseas. So the biggest takeaway from this application was that it served as a direct line to other service offerings, when additional assistance was required. So what I mean by that, or for example, if the user required any additional services regarding tax or immigration, etc., the application would redirect them to that appropriate attorney, internally at KPMG, further creating stickiness with the product and generating further revenue streams. And here are just some screenshots of what that application looks like. Again, mirrors their website, good colors, background image, and just some of the questions that they would pose to the user. Let's scroll down a little here. This next application is actually the KPMG Law Data Breach Assist app. So this is actually short and sweet slide here, but this application generated a web-based questionnaire to help customers determine whether existing clients of KPMG have committed any data breach as defined by the Australian Privacy Act. And upon completion of this application, a data breach assessment report was provided. So let me scroll down and show you what that looks like. So here are actually some of the screenshots from this application. You'll note they have a navigation bar on the left-hand side here, kind of orienting the user as to where they are within that actual application. And as you can imagine, as you go through, certain questions are going to be displayed to you dependent upon your answers. Again, streamlining what that process will look like for the user in the end perspective. And then here are just some further screenshots when you kind of go deeper into the application, and you'll note the report or the assessment that they would receive at the end of the app mirrored their company logo and or header and footer, and contained those variables which were captured throughout the application prior to. So you'll see the date was in there, their name, and then based upon their inputs, it would provide that particular output. The last KPMG application here is the Australian local file tracker. So this was an internal app that they was created for efficiencies for their corporate tax team. And this is when they were submitting a ALF, or that Australian local file. So the ALF itself was a very lengthy and large tax return, and the process to file it could be even more complex. So it required multiple documents and matters to be handled kind of simultaneously. And in creating this application, KPMG created more or less a matter management tool for their tax clients. In addition to that matter management tool, KPMG was able to kind of track the preparation, the review, and the submission of these matters as well. So I want to show a screenshot here of their first iteration of this actual application, just so you get an idea from a visual perspective. So this was actually the first iteration. So you can see kind of they just had these simple buttons here, if you would, to update your ALF, update any of them, view the dashboard, enter and update those client details. So some may say, yes, this doesn't have the jazz, if you will, of something that's externally facing. But the idea was they just wanted to get that quick win and show the capabilities of the application and the platform as a whole. So here, this was actually a dashboard that they created. So they built this dashboard to track the process of this ALFs. And then each time that they would build a new tax return, a new row or a new matter would be generated. And I'm not sure if everybody can see, but it was just kind of simple inputs, name, dates, whatever that may be. But the particular status of where that ALF currently lied would be reflected by these colors and dropdowns. So red, it hadn't started, and green, it was complete. So on the first iterations, the team had to come in and actually manually complete these updates. However, their latest iterations, and they created new digital solutions that allowed them to digitally submit these updates and complete these different parts of the actual workflow or process. And once they connected it with that actual app, these updates would be automatically, I should say, updated in real time to this actual dashboard. So they no longer had to do this manually. It was all 100% automated from a digital perspective. Last but not least, this is actually a DAS app. It was a web-based application. So DAS is a legal insurance company in Holland. And they work on over 100,000 cases a year and have about 850 in-house legal professionals, making them one of the largest law firms in the Netherlands. So one process that they knew they had to improve was how they dealt with incoming car accident claims. So most commonly, when they would receive these reports, they were not eligible or legible. They included many errors, and a lot of information was lost, again, because of the manually intensive process. So they built a web-based application around this car accident claim process, and they just hosted it on their website. So the application itself, it productized their legal and insurance knowledge. And this application actually integrated with a machine learning platform as well. And what it did there is that it identified keywords and text in their claims. And then DAS would receive these accident reports. They would send their reports to the third party to extract those key terms and data, whatever that may be. That data would then be reported back to the customer for validation. And then once confirmed, DAS would receive this 99% complete file, essentially completing their workflow. So they went from an unstructured handwritten text to something more of a structured digital output. So they created a workflow which allowed them, again, as you can see with the benefits, to increase their productivity, have a centralized dashboard displaying where that application sits in this workflow, and again, streamlined their intake process. And the last image I want to show from their particular application, yes, this is not in English, as you can gather, but it has a great look and feel. It's pretty simplistic. You can kind of register and start your case and get help, generate perhaps some sample letters. The biggest takeaway here is they actually built a chatbot in their application as well. And this is just some screenshots of what that actual chatbot or virtual assistant would look like. So that essentially concludes my presentation. So if there's any other questions or anybody wants to, discuss any additional information or has a request for additional information, you can feel free to reach out to myself directly, or even the contact information that you see here at info@neoto.com, or just our website in general.
For all the insights, that was and the use cases, fantastic information. If anybody has any questions, feel free to type them. Dennis is about to take his vacation now, so I'm gonna put him on the spot here.
Thanks, thank you, Colin. Thank you.
So like as legal teams are busier and busier, and they have to do less with more, or more with less, like I'd imagine, a system like this where a lot of what if then now logic, you got to create all these systems and automations that they're a heavy lift. Is that the case, or how is it?
So just from a knowledge engineering perspective, just identifying what that process may look like. I mean, yes, some may require some further input, from multiple parties across the actual company to really see what that process looks like from an end-to-end perspective. But again, we like to say kind of think small, right? You want to get that quick win to whereas you can show the value and the potential of automating a process. And what we tend to find at that point is you start with the quick win, it generates that interest or that buzz, internally. And the more people that see it and show it, it gets their minds kind of thinking of, okay, let's expand upon this. Or perhaps somebody else says, you know what, can you do this? Can we automate this process? And we find that the applications or, the digital solutions tend to grow exponentially, where you create that first iteration or prototype and you build upon that. And then the one app becomes two, two becomes four, and before you know it, you have some type of a centralized dashboard that kind of has a suite of applications that are available to you from, a legal, HR, procurement professional, whatever standpoint it may be.
So I kind of what I kind of glean from the system, and one of the reasons I like it is it kind of gives you the flexibility. If you can think it, you can build it, right? But at the same time, if I'm new to this and I'm like, I don't know what I don't know, how would I think about it? Do you have any kind of use cases with Neota Logic that beyond the NDA, right? Because the NDA is the low hanging fruit that everybody's, should be knocking out of the park. Is there anything else for an in-house for the use case that, beyond the NDA that brings value to the department?
Oh, I
other
mean,
than what you discussed?
no, absolutely. So, I mean, I could get into further specifics about it, but my general recommendation would be to check out, our app gallery on our website. There's multiple examples of use cases and kind of further descriptions and case studies about how companies came to actually create their applications, and then really just kind of what that user journey looks like. And then obviously you can access that application, granted it is public, on our website as well. But there's multiple examples of all the different potential uses or uses, potential capabilities of our actual platform.
So Mickey asked another good question. Like, what's the difference between using like a SharePoint workflow versus Neota?
So again, I mean, I think sometimes a SharePoint workflow or an off-the-shelf product is somewhat limiting yourself to what that is you're trying to achieve. Now, granted, if you're only focusing on, a workflow, and that is something that you wanted to do, and there's a workflow tool that you have in mind, by all means, I'm not going to try to tell you to not pursue Neota. But from what I can gather from our competitors and just those that I have seen, is the value comes into the fact that we're not limited or restricted to just that workflow perspective. So again, you can create that workflow, but perhaps you want to utilize that information that you've captured throughout the workflow for additional applications or trigger automated actions to protect, internal or external users. Somewhat leverage that information, for internal record keeping or identifying or analyzing trends in the industry. I haven't seen a lot of other potential competitors, if you will, that do have the capabilities of, said platforms such as Neota. But if there's anything you wanted to discuss further, Mickey or whomever that may come from, I'm happy to, kind of jump on a call and we can just discuss that quickly. As Colin indicated, I will be going on vacation, but we all know when you're working remotely, there's no such thing as vacation. Your computer and phone is always available. So I'm happy to jump on a call, Mickey. That'd be fine with me.
So I think, is it a comment or a question from Alexander? Can you see that below?
Let me see. I think. Yes, exactly. I mean, you hit the what am I trying to say? The head of the nail there. But yes, so exactly as you said, kind of working through exactly that process automation. It really helps unfold. I'm quoting exactly what you said: the potential to analyze and see those additional use cases. And again, once you kind of identify what the actual process looks like, the time and dedication it takes into creating that, and if you were to streamline that, that's where you really get into demonstrating your ROI. But we do have some specific ROI examples of applications. If that's something that you would like me to send you as well, Alexandra, I'd be happy to do so.
So it looks like at this point there's not any more questions. And you told me it was going to be a short presentation to begin with. So you've answered my questions, and you gave us you said there was a resource on the Neota Logic website that we can address for further use cases.
Yes, that's correct. And I mean, again, feel free to reach out to myself, and it's really just my last name, Rasmussen, at neotalogic.com. And I'd be happy to, expand upon anything or just have a general introductory call about Neota and its capabilities. And yeah, Colin, I gave the example. I'm giving people, 15 minutes of their day back. And it's like we said, when you're kind of taking a final exam and the teacher says you could have your book, so I'm not going to hold you the full hour. I'll let people enjoy the rest of their Tuesday here.
I don't know if that's a punishment these days with COVID, right? Being locked up.
Yeah, true. Very true. Very true.
But I just want to, hey everybody, I just want to thank you so much for attending today's event. I recognize a lot of the names, attendees, and I appreciate all your support the whole time, kind of pushing knowledge through. Please feel free to reach out to me at colin@legaloperators.com if there's any topics that you'd like addressed. In the future, I'm building this series out for the next 6 to 8 months. Right now, I'm working with a lot of just topics around like process, spend optimization, data analytics, benchmarking, and legal technologies like Neota Logic, and really kind of want to flush this out, take the blinkers off everybody, take the blinkers off myself, ask questions, and look at adding value. So if you can share any feedback, feel free to rip us apart. We're thick-skinned. Again, I want Dennis, thank you so much for all the insights today. Incredible product. I endorsed it. Happy happy to partner with Neota. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your last name. Is it Rasmussen at neotalogic.com?
Correct. Yes. And as we mentioned, it's a deal breaker for the previous people I've dated. But Rasmussen is correct. That's it.
Awesome. So regarding the follow-up, I will be following up everybody who attended today's event with a copy. And are you okay if I share the slide deck, Dennis, with all the attendees?
Absolutely. That's fine.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. And have a good rest of your week. Look forward to connecting again.
Thank you, everybody, as well, and stay safe.
Thanks, and enjoy the vacation, Dennis.
Thank you. I'll try.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye.